everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Foxy and this is Foxy Books and Planning. Today is my reading wrap up for the month of November. This is where I go over all the books I finished, all the books I'm working on, and the books that I'm targeting next in terms of kind of a loose TBR. So happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully this video will go up either just before or on Thanksgiving Day. But overall, I am really happy with this month's progress. I got a lot of books done. A lot of the books that I did finish ended up being like one day, one night-ish reads. And I'm hoping I can carry this momentum into the end of the year. I am really close to hitting my reading goal of 80 books. I think I'm like 6 or 7 books away. And if I manage to clear out my TBR, my currently reading list on Goodreads, that would actually, I think, just about hit it for the year. Some of those books I know I'm not going to get through, but I would like to clear out as much as possible. So to get started, the first book I completed this month was Son of a Lich by J. Zachary Pike. This is Dark Prophet Saga Book 2. I finished Orconomics, which is the first book in this series, in the month of October and just kind of kept the momentum going. I do own this as a personal audiobook and I did give this 5 stars. I really enjoy this particular series. It's a really good blend of fantasy tropes and kind of real world commentary. This book in particular was a little different in that I expected it felt as though it really could be 2 books. There's kind of a midpoint that is kind of like the perfect break to make it 2 separate books. But that's not what the author chose to do. It actually does work well as a complete work as well. In this one, after the events of book 1, we see our band of adventurers trying to stop the Lich, who is gathering an army, from threatening the state of Andoran, or the country of Andoran, and the Free States. And all of the shenanigans that leads up to that. In particular, I don't want to say more without spoiling. There are a couple of sections that I found absolutely hilarious. There is a section where they go to visit some of the dwarf character whose name has suddenly escaped me, Goran's friends, who are kind of like mad scientist type characters at their company, which is, I'll throw up a name if I can find it again. But they're trying to develop a scale for measuring weapon damage output utilizing a gelatinous rhombohedron. And for those of you who are not D&D people, a gelatinous rhombohedron is a silly way to refer to a gelatinous cube, which in D&D is kind of this perilous dungeon monster that just kind of sucks people up and dissolves them. And there's a couple different varieties, but that scene is downright hilarious. There is a third book that the author is in the middle of writing. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll come out next year. If not, I will just wait patiently, or not so patiently, for book 3 to come out. Next on my list of books completed is Malice by Heather White. I had this as an ARC from NetGalley, thank you so much, and I did end up giving it 5 stars. So Malice follows the story of Alice, the Dark Grace, in the Kingdom of Briar Rose. I believe it's the Kingdom of Briar Rose. It is a Sleeping Beauty retelling from the Dark Fairy's point of view. There is a LGBTQ love angle between Alice and Princess Aurora. And I did enjoy the book. I think I've said pretty much ad nauseum on a couple of other things that my primary issue with this book was the amount of world building, because this is not a very long book. But the world building takes up a large portion of the book. to the detriment of the plot and the detriment of the character development. It's also not clear if this book is meant to be a standalone or the start of a series. Considering it is YA, I assume that there's going to be at least a second book if this book does well. But I really wish that they had cut back on some of the world building and allowed the world building to just kind of happen organically, instead of just kind of like info dumping in conversation. But overall, I did enjoy it. I think it's an interesting take on Sleeping Beauty. There are some really, really interesting tidbits in it that I wish would have been expanded on. And I wish the ending was honestly a little bit better, but that is neither here nor there. It comes out, I believe it's January or February of next year. I will throw up the actual release date for y'all in case you want to put it on your list of things to purchase. The next book, I have my physical copy here. Silvered Serpents by Roshani Chokshi. This is Gilded Wolves book 2. I read Gilded Wolves earlier this year and was waiting for Silvered Serpents to come out. This one, I ended up giving 4 stars. I gave Gilded Wolves 5 stars. I definitely think this suffers from middle book syndrome. In that, and what I mean by middle book syndrome is, at least in my experience in trilogies, when reading trilogies, there's often the middle book is not as good as the first book and the third book, just because we have to get, it's kind of a transition of, we've had this big inciting incident in book 1 and we have the big epic conclusion in book 3, so book 2 just kind of has to get us from point A to point B. That's what this felt like. We pick up with our merry band of forging thieves about 6 to 8 months after the events of the first book. Severin is still grieving his brother Tristan, and they are trying to find the Sleeping Palace, which is the fallen house's kind of vault of stuff, because they are trying to find the sacred lyrics, divine lyrics, there we go, which are supposed to be part of the very top of the Tower of Babel and some of the most powerful pieces of God imbued stuff on the planet. And in myth, they have the ability to basically undo all the magic in the world. And so in this book, they're continuing, or that's the kind of idea of what the MacGuffin they're going after, and that ends up with them in Siberia. And it's kind of, I can't really give that much more plot summary just because I don't want to spoil book 1 too much, and I don't want to spoil this book guide too much. I do say if you liked Gilded Wolves, this is worth a read. I'm happy to know it was this is going to be a trilogy. I went into this book thinking it was a duology, and I was really upset with the ending. Then looked at it and I'm like, okay, there's book 3. I'm fine. In general, I think Gilded Wolves works perfectly fine as a standalone. It does end on a slight cliffhanger. This one ends on a major cliffhanger. Luckily, book 3 is expected next year, but it's definitely a solid YA fantasy mystery type book. Definitely recommend this series if you haven't already tried it. All right. Oh. 1 second. Okay, so the next book I finished this month was One by One by Ruth Ware. I had this as a library ebook and I ended up giving it 3 stars. Ruth Ware is one of those authors that's very hit and miss for me. I read, so far of her works, I've read The Death of Mrs. Westaway and The Turn of the Key, I believe it is. And at least with her last 2 releases, The Turn of the Key and this one, I kind of feel like Ruth Ware is kind of doing homages to kind of the great hits of thriller, mystery thriller. The Turn of the Key was her homage to The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, and One by One really reads as her homage to And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. So in this book, we are following a group of IT business people who are going on a corporate retreat in the French Alps, or Swiss Alps, somewhere in the Alps in the French-speaking parts. I think it's the French Alps. Doesn't matter. And it becomes very apparent early on in the story that they are there because the company is trying to decide if they are going to take a buyout or go public. And there's a very small cast of characters. There's basically the two chalet hosts, the chef and the kind of hostess housekeeper. And then we have the CEO, the CMO, or the two CEOs, because they joint CEOs. The chief technology guy, the chief marketing person, the HR guy, their legal counsel, and then their two assistants. And then an extra character who is a former employee of the company, and there are dark secrets and things that come to light later. It is very evident from the beginning of the book that one of the two viewpoints we get is the killer, so it makes it not as thrillery, not as mystery. It becomes pretty obvious pretty early on who the killer is. And the book kind of switches halfway through, a little less than halfway through, from a murder mystery to a outright slasher movie where the murderer has been discovered, and so they go and they're just trying to kill off as many people as possible. In general, the plot was fine. The pacing was great. This was one of the books that I sat down, I got the book, and I was like, okay, let me start reading it as my nighttime read, and I read it in 12-ish hours. So super short, super easy to read, super engaging, but it felt like Ruth Ware was really ripping off other authors, and the characters just didn't feel fully formed, and the reveals were just kind of obvious, if I'm honest. And the skiing chalet location could have been better used. And overall, I think that considering the other books I've read by Ruth Ware, the kind of twisty turniness of this book I know she can do it better. I just wish that she had. And this kind of really tells me that maybe I should not bother with Ruth Ware's next book unless the premise is really something intriguing to me. If you're looking for a book for your vacation or your holiday travel plans, if you are actually traveling for the holidays, or need something to read on that one PTO day that you had to take, even though you're not going anywhere because you've got PTO to burn and nowhere to go, I would suggest it. If you're looking for a good introductory mystery thriller, this would be a good one as well. For those who are more seasoned, I would definitely say just skip it. If you're really looking for this kind of mystery thriller, pick up And Then There Were None. It's a better book. But that being said, next book is The Escape by Lisa Harris. I got this as an e-arc from NetGalley. I ended up giving it 4 stars. This is the first book in a new series by Lisa Harris. I think it's called her U.S. Marshals series. We're following 2 characters who are U.S. Marshals. One of them is relatively new and is still kind of grieving her dead husband. And they are partnered together on the seasoned partners return to Seattle on a prisoner transport mission to Denver. And during the flight, something goes wrong, the plane crashes, and one of the convicts escapes. Prisoners escapes. And the rest of the book is them trying to catch him before he gets away. So it definitely was paced well. It was definitely an intriguing read. I do want to put a caveat on this, as Lisa Harris describes herself as a Christian author. There is some overtones of faith and Christianity and God in this book, because her full-time job when she's not writing is as a missionary in Africa. So you can definitely see the influences in the work. They're not crazy. They're not in your face. It didn't really bother me, and I normally get bothered by super overtly Christian things. The characters were interesting, albeit a little one-dimensional. I especially wish that the female marshal character, whose name has escaped me, please, future me, tell me snarkily how I should know this already. But I really wish that those two, that her characterization had been delved into a little bit more. And there's very early on in the book, Ms. Harris sets up a kind of series-long mystery about what actually happened with the female marshal's husband. And I really would have preferred to just see a book about that just kind of had the escape in the background. The escape, or the main plotline itself, read very similar to some of the tropes you see in television that at least my family really dislikes, especially where it's like the bad guy is always one step ahead, and it's like, you're U.S. Marshals, you have all of this resource granted at the beginning. They don't. But once the whole of the FBI and the U.S. Marshals are involved, you would expect for things to be wrapped up a whole lot quicker than they end up wrapped up. I also felt that the ending was a little rushed, and that I kind of wanted some kind of climactic confrontation in that final scene, and it doesn't actually really happen. It just kind of teeters off, and then we get the next bit of our overarching mystery in the series, and then the book ends. This book comes out next year, I want to say. Or no, it already came out. I got it from NetGalley just before it came out. I think it was like November 5th. The second book is due out in spring of next year. It's another one, if you're looking for an easy, quick read for holidays, or you want to do a book in a day or something like that, definitely a good book for you. Mystery thriller. It's an okay mystery thriller. It's really a thriller, not really a mystery. But it would be interesting to see where she takes the series, but I don't know if I really want to take my time with all of the other books that are in my queue right now. All right, next up is a book that I was super excited to be able to read this year, which is Crazy Stupid Bromance by Lisa K. Adams. This is Bromance Book Club Book 3. Came out in October. I got it from the library as an ebook, and I could not have been happier. I did end up giving this one 5 stars. I felt that this book was a return to form from the first book, because my main issue with the second book is that in the first book, Bromance Book Club, Lisa K. Adams sets up the structure where the central romance plot follows the plot of a fictitious romance novel, hence the names. And the second book didn't have that, and I really wish it had. And the third book does it again, albeit less than the first book, but I still really, really enjoyed it. In this one, we're following Noah, the IT guru hacktivist, trying to navigate his relationship with Alexis, the owner of the Toe Beans Cat Cafe, who is introduced in book 2. They've been friends. This takes place about a year or so after book 2. And so they're both in that like will they, won't they kind of thing. And I'm gonna hit myself if it's not Alexis. Alexis's birth father, who has been completely not involved in her life, she didn't even know he existed, kind of pops out of the woodwork on his deathbed asking for a kidney. And so that's kind of the secondary problem in the book. I really enjoy Noah as a character. I really enjoy Alexis as a character. I liked seeing the evolution of some of the more bromance or the book club characters. I liked seeing Noah be introduced to the book club and have kind of a similar format to book 1. And I also like how we know book 4 has already been announced, and we know it's going to feature the Russian, which is super exciting. And the end of this book really tails off into that one, and I just can't wait. This series and Lisa K. Adams' romance novels as a whole are light, they're funny. The more adult scenes are really well done. I really, really recommend it, even if you're not a romance fan. At least try Bromance Book Club. But I really enjoy her works, and I'm not a big romance novel reader either. So I would really highly recommend picking this one up, especially for just to have a slight, small, happy, lighthearted book in the midst of all of the darkness and turmoil that is 2020. All right. And my last book I finished this month is Full Throttle by Joe Hill. This is a personal audiobook that I ended up giving 5 stars to. It is a short story collection, and I will just throw up somewhere on the screen the lists of short stories that are included in this. I really enjoyed the audiobook. Each short story is narrated by a different author or a different person. The introduction is narrated by Joe Hill himself. If you don't know, huge fan of Joe Hill. I'll link my Joe Hill deep dive from earlier this year up here somewhere. But I really, really enjoyed it. There's only 1 or 2 stories that I wasn't super jazzed about, mainly because I didn't quite understand the stories when I was listening to them. And when I got to the author's notes at the end, it made more sense that I would have enjoyed them more in print than I did or in an audio setting. My personal favorites from this book are probably Dark Carousel, which is about a group of teens who rob a carousel owner or carousel operator on a Maine pier. Fudge. That was definitely number 1. I know Fawn was number 3. Fawn is about a kind of Narnia, C.S. Lewis-y kind of thing, where big game hunters pay a guy $500,000 each for the ability to go through a magical door in his house that leads to another world where fantasy creatures are real. And oh man. I'll throw up. I'm forgetting what number 2 was, and I feel really weird because I feel like I should know this. Please hold. Okay, took a check. So my second favorite story in Full Throttle is called Late Returns. It is about a man who is working through clearing out his parents' house in a small town in New England, and he takes on a part-time job of driving a bookmobile for the town library system. And he runs into the people called Late Returns, where they're dead, the people who are deceased, who are returning a book, and he has the opportunity to give them one last good read before they die. In the past. It's time jumping, really weird, really entertaining. That one's read by Will Wheaton, and I really appreciate it. There are 2 short stories that were written in collaboration with Stephen King in this one. It does include In the Tall Grasses, which was turned into a Netflix film. That one was okay for me. It definitely reads as more Stephen King than Joe Hill to me. And I feel like that, at least from what I've seen of the Netflix movie takes it one step further. And I kind of wish the short story had gone there. And then Throttle, which is the first story in the book. I really liked Throttle. It didn't quite make my top 3 list. I really do highly, highly recommend Joe Hill. He's one of my favorite authors, if not my favorite author of all time at this point. I read pretty much everything he puts out, though I still have to read Sweater Weather. It's on my list. And I'm waiting for him to come out with another novel. I know he does have graphic novels. I've considered taking some time to go through those. I did read Lock and Key back in February. I didn't count it towards my book count for the year just because it's a very short it's a comic book. And like, I count Watchmen, but Watchmen is really like a novel just with lots of pictures. So I'm just kind of torn on whether or not to read those. I do want to try Basketful of Heads if I can ever find a copy that's not electronic. But I do really, really highly recommend this short story collection. It's better in a lot of ways than 20th Century Ghosts, just because I have a lot of stories in 20th Century Ghosts that I just prefer to skip over when I re-listen to it. It does have some of his best stories, but the two combined are just great. I've never really been super disappointed with Joe Hill, except for that one book, which you'll just have to check my video where I go over the one Joe Hill novel I don't particularly care for and why I don't particularly care for it, but I will read everything he writes and publishes for the rest of time. So moving on to the currently readings, I actually have 3 physical books for this one, woohoo! And the first one of those is Camelot Betrayal by Kirsten White. This is Camelot Rising Book 2. This is the sequel to the Guinevere Deception that I read earlier this year, and really, 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 really enjoyed. This one I have mixed feelings about so far. I did pre-order it, and I'm about 30% of the way in so far. It picks up right after the end of the first book, and we see Guinevere kind of developing more as a character, along with Lancelot and Brunhild. Brannigan. Brannigan is Guinevere's maid's name. So far, it's okay. It's harder for me to get into this one. This one didn't snag me as much. Also, as beautiful as the first book is, I feel like this one is a little bit of a letdown. I kind of wanted all of the blue water splashes to be blue foil, and it kind of looks like that was what was intended. Kind of wish they had actually done that. But we'll see how I end up enjoying it, and I'll probably have a full thoughts for you in December. Alright, next is Columbus Day, Expeditionary Force Book 1 by Craig Allenson. I made 5% progress. I think it was like 3 or 4 pages. This one, as I've said before, is about a guy named Joe Bishop who joins the U.S. Expeditionary Force to outer space after the world Earth is attacked by a race of hamster aliens called the Ruhar. Yes. And the Earth, not the US, the Earth has decided to fall in line with the side of the galactic conflict against the Ruhar. I'm at the point right now where Bishop is out of basic training and is doing normal peacekeeping duties on a planet inhabited by the Ruhar, and is starting to learn more that there's more to the intergalactic conflict than anyone on Earth first thought. I do really enjoy this one, and I'm probably going to make more of an effort to read it once I finish Camelot Betrayal, because this is my normal bedtime book. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This one is probably one of the most hotly anticipated booktube books of the year. Basically what it is we're following Addie LaRue, who has made a deal with a demon or the devil or some nefarious trickster spirit for immortality. But the one catch is that nobody remembers her. And I'm about 18% of the way into the book. And kind of the inciting incident with the book is that somebody finally remembers her. And that's about, I think I've just gotten to that inciting incident in the book. I really enjoy the writing style. I really enjoy Addie as a character. A lot of the book so far has been based on her is grounded in her backstory. So hopefully we'll see if the pacing keeps up, but I do really, really enjoy the book so far. All right, next is Watchmen by Alan Moore, the graphic novel that is literally a novel. I made 3% progress since last time. I'm getting there. This one will probably be finished by New Year's. It will not probably be finished by New Year's. It will be finished by New Year's. I will force myself if I have to. I haven't made it super much farther. I do enjoy it. It's just that I haven't felt pulled to read it lately, so not as much progress as I'd hoped. All right. Next is Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This one, huge amount of progress this month. I made 34% progress. I'm now over halfway. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. This one is just really hard to get through. It's very similar to 100 Years of Solitude in that it focuses mainly on our central couple and kind of their lives as they kind of go their separate ways and still love each other. I'm hopeful that something extra will happen at some point, but we'll see. Gabriel Garcia Marquez is kind of known for that kind of he doesn't really do plot. He's kind of driven by his characters, and so he'll write whatever the characters want to kind of go for. And I'm hoping the characters will grow some cojones and go do something soon. But we'll see. This one I do plan to have finished by the end of the year. Hopefully it'll be finished probably in the first week of December, because I have huge audiobook plans for December. They're probably not going to turn out well, but they're still huge plans. And then my last two books for my currently readings are the ones I make no progress on. I have no idea when I'm going to finish them, which are Lord Foul's Bane by Stephen R. Donaldson and Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. How can I make progress on these when I'm reading a bunch of other things that take one day to read? That being said, I have 2 books on deck for December. The first one is probably the biggest book release of the year, which is Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, which is Stormlight Archives Book 4. I actually ended up pre-ordering the audiobook from Audible using a credit, and I got it last week. I downloaded the first part. It's a 49-ish hour audiobook. I've got part 1, which is like the first 8 to 10 hours downloaded and waiting for me. I just haven't started yet because I've been trying to finish up some of my other books. But that one is on deck for December once I get Chronicle of a Death Foretold. Love in the Time of Cholera done. That one is probably going to take me a couple of months to finish, and it will probably have several kind of other audiobooks that get sprinkled in because those books are a lot. Still super pumped, super excited to get to it. I'm one of those that as soon as the next one comes out, I pick it up and I read it. So I'm super pumped, super excited. It's just going to take forever. The other one is another NetGalley arc that I picked up. It's called Shanghai Secrets by Sulari Gentile. It comes out January 21st, 2021, and I have it as an ebook. This one I didn't realize it when I requested it. I probably should have looked before I requested it. Shanghai Secrets is the 10th book in a cozy mystery series set in 1920s Australia, and this book is the departure from that, where we see our characters go to Shanghai for a wool purveyors convention. Our main character is kind of an artist, communist, mystery solver, and he decides to take along all of his communist artist friends, and shenanigans ensues. I I did read the first couple of pages just because I wanted to see if I was going to be able to handle the writing style. That's how I discovered it was book like 10 in a series. But I think it's going to go okay. That's when it's kind of awkward because I only have it on my phone, so I can only read it when I'm on my phone. So that one I do need to finish this in December because I want to make sure my review's out for January. But other than that, nothing else on deck. So to summarize the month in statistics. For the month of November, I have finished 7 books. I am currently reading 7 books. I have 2 books on deck, and my combined currently reading progress is 90% of another book. Not super surprising. I'm really happy with my completed numbers. Those are pretty high for me, and the currently reading could be a little higher, but I finished a lot more than I expected, so less progress overall was made in the currently readings. With that, please do remember to like and subscribe. Comment down below if you agree or disagree with any of my takes on any of these books. Just remember, it's my opinion. It's not that serious. And if you have any books that you think I ought to check out, leave them in the comments down below as well. With that, I will talk to y'all in another video. Bye.